because they didn't make the conference finals. They were the number 1 seed. They won 60 games, major props to them or whatever. But I'm just talking about their expectations. Once we saw what we saw, particularly from Cade Cunningham emerging as a league MVP candidate, it's not that the result, meaning losing the series, was a disappointment. It's how they went out on your home court in a game 7, down by damn near 40. That's the disappointment. That's where that comes in, because it reminded us of what their deficiencies are. We got to give credit where credit is due to JB Bickerstaff, who was my coach of the year. You don't have Malik Beasley because of personal reasons he got himself into. You lose Dennis Schroeder, of course, Tim Hardaway Jr., and you're looking at Cade Cunningham, and you really, really didn't have a bona fide secondary scorer. We saw it in the previous series against Orlando when Tobias Harris showed up and really showed out. But that wasn't the case for him against Cleveland. Jalen Duren and these boys, we didn't see but so much from them as well. And Detroit appeared extremely limited. So you almost feel like, listen, the better team won the series. Cleveland is obviously offensively is a better opponent than the Detroit Pistons. And you got to say that for sure. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint, it was a successful season, no doubt, to win 60 games, to get to game 7 of the conference semifinals. But the flip side to it is that 7th game, how you ended it, getting blown out on your home turf like that, it just showed you how deficient Detroit really was. And that was where the disappointment lied. Not in anything else, just in that.
I think it was a great season for the Detroit Pistons. Seriously, all across the board. For a few reasons that you just alluded to, Stephen. Now, you just talked about them losing Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, Tim Hardaway Jr. Dennis Jenkins was on a 2-way contract up until the middle of the season. And I think about this team, I look at this team and I look at how Minnesota Timberwolves used to look before they went to the conference finals. You remember when they were trying to get it together? And this is where you have to start leaning and trusting your player development, right? Because think about Jaden McDaniels when he first hit the playoff stage, right? He was a hell of a defender, but offensively he had to work on his game. Asua Thompson, take notes, right? All of a sudden, you look at Jalen Duren. Now, all of a sudden, you can have these accountability moments, even from JB Bickerstaff, right? Coming into next year. Hey, you know what we gonna do? We gonna have this 82-game season as like somewhat of a dress rehearsal for Jalen Duren. We're gonna feature him more in certain scenarios offensively, isolations. That way you build up going into the postseason, because a lot of his points, majority of his points this year came off of lobs, pick and roll action, pin down, slip, dunker spot, offensive rebounds. Jay, you know this. That's the easiest thing to take away in the postseason. So, but he's 22 years old. Like, I'm not harping, should he get paid? Yes, he should get paid. He should get paid every single penny, and you develop the hell out of him and Asua Thompson, and you just keep building.
I don't know what's going on today, but we running some like high-level pick and roll today. We're like twins out here. You're on Schwarzenegger.
I got a little floater. I had a little floater. I had a little floater, Jay. I had a little floater.
We in lockstep here. I'm going to go like this. I don't think it was a disappointing of a season for them. I think Detroit has accelerated their timeline. And I think Cleveland, SA, has exposed the exact point of where Detroit is in their evolution. Don't forget, 2 years ago, they had won 14 games. 2 years ago, only 14 games. Last year, 44. This year, 60, number 1 seed. We all love Mike Wilbon. He's the OG. Every time I see Mike, we end up breaking down basketball to a level that all of us think are like with the historians of basketball. He always says, you got to start experiencing that scar tissue, that pain, and start paying your dues.
He says,
right? Despair. Getting to that point. And I think right now, we're seeing Cade Cunningham exhaust a lot of his options. We're asking the right questions. Jalen Duren, who's the number 2? Who can slide into that spot? Tobias Harris, 5 points last night. He exceeded expectations with all the things that you guys just said. I think Detroit is well on their way. I think Cleveland got the best of them because, you know, at the end of the day, they didn't have the endurance to get them over the hump. But I think Detroit has had one hell of a season.
They've had one hell of a season. I was just talking about how it ended, the manner in which it ended on their home turf. That's all I'm talking about, nothing else. But I want to say this about Asar Thompson, because I'm a fan of him and his brother. I love their athleticism. I love their energy. I love what they bring to the table. Asar Thompson, you got to work on your shot, bro. I mean, it was 4-on-5 offensively. They were daring him to shoot. And not only that, you know it's bad when not only are they daring you to shoot perimeter shots, but they don't mind you going to the free throw line either, because you'll never make 2 or 2. You can't do that. And the Detroit Pistons are going to ascend. He's too important to their future to be such a liability offensively. He has got to work on his shot, period. He's got to work on his perimeter shot and his free throw shooting. He's got to be some kind of a threat in order for Detroit to ascend.
Reach the final. So this is kind of chalk for what we've seen. And this is a young group growing. It feels like a step in the right direction for them, but they got absolutely destroyed in Game 7. You would expect after what happened in Game 6 that you would have had a more competitive matchup. They lost by 31 points. It's the third largest defeat by a 60-win team in NBA postseason history. So I don't know how you can't feel a little bit of a letdown if you're Detroit by the way the season ended. Just a huge margin of defeat. You were obviously outmatched based on what you did this entire season being a number 1 seed, even though it's a young group that's still growing, CC.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, I don't think they have anything to hang their heads about. I think there are some serious flaws in roster construction. They haven't found an adequate replacement for Malik Beasley, and I thought that was a big difference from last year's team to this year's team. They don't have the secondary scoring that you would expect for a team that has the number 1 seed in the postseason that's vying to get to the Final Four. But I'm just sitting there looking at the complexion of the series, and I'm wondering to myself, did J.B. Bickerstaff have a point when he talked about the officiating? Because I'm not in the posture of wanting to blame the officials for the outcome of a series, but some of the stats are a little bit staggering when you look at how one-sided they are. The Cavs shot 60 more free throws than the Pistons in this series. The Pistons had 42 more personal fouls than the Cavs. I don't know what was going on in this series. Maybe it was Donovan Mitchell preempting the Detroit Pistons defense by talking about the officiating in the playoffs, and that led to a friendly whistle by Cleveland. But I just got to say, it feels like there's a there when it comes to what J.B. Bickerstaff was talking about during this series. And when you look at some of the statistics and the outcome, it feels a little one-sided in terms of how the officials called the game.
If you think about what the Pistons did this season, 60 wins, okay? And by the way, going into next year, we are officially graduated from the losing streak. I don't want to hear about the losing streak 3 years ago anymore. Like, that's long gone, right? I understand the evolution of the team, but like at some point, all right, they had a 28-game losing streak, all-time bad. We know how bad they were, but like they were the 1 seed this year. That's who they are currently, a 60-win team. In the first round, they needed to come back from 3-1 down against Orlando, and that was a banged-up Orlando team with Franz Wagner out. Then in this series, they had a lead. I mean, they had a chance to do something with it, and they weren't able to do it here, obviously, and they get blown out. And we talk about the help, right, in terms of Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham was not good last night. 37 minutes, 13 points, 5 of 16 from the floor, 0 of 7 from behind the arc. But if you want to know very simply where Detroit went wrong, since Cade was drafted, they had the number 5 pick in the draft 3 years in a row. 2022, 2023, and 2024. Combined, last night, 3 number 5 picks in the draft scored 8 points. One of those guys is not on the team anymore. That's Jaden Ivey. You want to know where the help went wrong? Why Cade doesn't have a secondary piece? When you have the number 5 pick in the draft 3 years in a row after taking Cade Cunningham number 1, and right this second from an offensive perspective, you're swinging and missing on all 3. It was Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, who's excellent on defense, but it's not an offensive player, and Ron Holland, who only played garbage time last night.
Yeah.
That's when we have the critique around Jalen Duren saying he's not doing too much. Well, Jalen Duren is not a secondary option. Jalen Duren is supposed to be in the Jared Allen role. Jalen Duren is supposed to be in the Mitchell Robinson role, Isaiah Hartenstein role. I mean, whatever big you want to bring up, that is a complementary piece to an offensive player's greatness.
Yeah.
Not a secondary piece.
Yes, and I completely agree with everything that you're saying. Let me ask you a question. What is the Pistons' superpower?
Effort.
Okay.
That's to me, that's their superpower. Is they?
Okay.
I feel like they're max effort.
If you would have asked me, I would say effort too, along with physicality and defense.
Okay.
To me, that would be their superpower. When the game is officiated the way that it's been this series, you mitigate that to some degree. When you don't allow the Pistons to be overly physical, like they had been throughout the majority of the regular season and like they were against Toronto, then all of a sudden, what they do best, their style of play, their ethos, their identity is neutralized. And it felt like with the way the game was officiated throughout the course of this series, you took away the strength of the Detroit Pistons. You forced them to play left-handed. And the deficiency when it comes to secondary scoring, especially guys not named Cade Cunningham, comes to the forefront. And that's why you get outcomes, you get games like we saw last night, where they're so one-sided, where it felt like the court was tilted one way, the Cavs way, the entire night. So, yeah, I absolutely think that there's some work to do from that front office in terms of being able to address that major need. Mm-hmm. And they do have some flexibility, so we'll see where they go with it, how they spend their money, and some of the moves that they decide to make.